Hi, I'm Tamara Thomas,
And I'm Jackie Shrigley.
and welcome to another episode of Urban Health Weekly, where we talk about, stuff that's going on in the medical research community and how it intersects with our urban lives, right?
That's right.
Have you, Jackie, have you seen that show? I started watching the show. I didn't want to watch it, but it was a recommendation. And I have practically devoured season 2. It's called
Now you're hooked.
Yeah,
What's it called?
Dirty John Betty. So the first season is Dirty John.
Okay.
It's like these true crime stories that, and they turn them into.
Right.
So it's Dirty John Betty.
Okay.
So this season is about Betty Broderick.
Betty Broderick. I haven't heard that name in so long. But I was looking it up the other day because something came up. I was watching something and up popped this in my feed, something about Oprah. And they had this thing about Betty Broderick. I think I was like reading about like narcissists and all that kind of juicy stuff. Yeah.
It's on Netflix, and I'm up to episode 7. I apologize if this is a spoiler for anybody, but I have to talk about this because I sat and watched this slack-jawed because I was just like, how could she allow this to happen to herself? How didn't she see any of this? And I know it's always easy to be like an armchair shrink and stuff like that and say, how can you? But we've been divorced, so we know when relationships go bad.
Yes.
And that's, sometimes you got to just cut your losses and move on. But I was just slack-jawed because I was just like, how could she possibly think with all of this going on that he's going to come back?
Is that how it was? Is that the story?
Well, that's not the whole story. The whole story was, how her husband had basically used her all these years. She helped put him through school. I mean, it was loans, but she supported them while he went and was hobnobbing and pretending that he was, well-to-do and all this other stuff, and getting into the right circles and meeting.
Oh, he was climbing. He was climbing.
Right, exactly. Social climbing. So she's taking care of the kids. She's working part-time. She's selling Tupperware. She's doing whatever she can to keep them afloat while he's off doing whatever. They decide, okay, well, I'm going to strike out on my own. So they make the big investment. He gets his office, and she's like his ride or die. And she's like, you've got to do this and you've got to fake it till you make it and all this other stuff. So he makes it huge.
Wow.
And he kind of almost turned on her. I think it was in any event, like, I mean, this was like all over the news. You had to have heard about this.
I vaguely remember years and years ago, they were really hard on her that she had just like lost her temper and she had like killed him and killed his like girlfriend or wife.
His wife.
And the wife. And then I remember Oprah interviewing her in jail, and then they had her kids like on the Oprah show like once or twice. And then they really just made it look like she had no remorse, no anything whatsoever. And then years later, I remember her being on, and one of the kids said, my father treated her really badly in the divorce. And that was
it one of the boys or one of the girls?
It was one of the boys.
Huh. Okay.
That's what I remember. But that's about the extent of it. And I think it popped up in my feed because I was reading about like, narcissistic people and narcissistic men. And, so just in that little blurb that must have popped up. And the impression I get is that husband like had every intention of just like using her until, he was done. And then so I'm sure it was just more complicated than just her being nuts. That's the feeling I get.
Well, what happened was, he was gaslighting her for years,
Okay.
making her believe that he wasn't involved with the secretary when he was in fact involved with her the entire time. And he would encourage her, make her think that that everything was fine, that it was all in her head. That you're crazy, Betty. There's nothing. Bets, we're fine. Would you stop this? You
Oh
sound
my
crazy.
gosh.
A woman knows when things are different in the relationship.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
they weren't being intimate. He was distant. He was a bit cold with her.
Yes.
And he's convincing her all the while that everything is fine. It's completely in her head. Meanwhile, he's making all the plans behind her back for how to divorce her and, and maximize the assets. See, I think he knew that she wanted them to be back together. Despite all of that, all she wanted everything to be the way it was, which her friends kept telling her, you're not thinking this through.
That's why he married her, because she was somebody who could be manipulated. That's why he married
malleable. She never set boundaries from the beginning. She wanted,
he knew she was unstable, and he married her because he could manipulate her. That's what it was about. Nobody said, none of the other attorneys said, that's not really kosher. You shouldn't be doing that.
Some of the wives did. And he was just like, well, you should mind your business and you should worry about your own relationship.
So entitled, a super entitled guy, super entitled.
And he really believed that she had nothing to do with his success, that it was all him.
That's
the whole time, and that she was riding his coattails. And he would financially penalize her because she just had no self-control. She had no self-control.
Okay.
She would violate or restrain.
It was very easy. She didn't look good, and it was easy to make sure that everybody knew she didn't look good but he knew that about her. Right.
And then what I was questioning? I was questioning this woman. Now I know she was young and impressionable, and she was dazzled.
Are you talking about the new wife?
Yes, the new wife. How could you marry somebody who would treat their ex so shabbily?
I know how he did it.
Yeah.
Because he was such a smooth talker that he made her believe, and she was right for believing, that the ex was crazy, that the ex was a horrible person, and everything that she did, she deserved. And that he is just completely like this perfect guy, and he's the victim in this.
Yes.
And she was right to believe him, and that's why he's marrying the new one. Yeah. He married the new one because she believed him and saw him in the way that he wants to be seen.
Yes.
It's not a relationship of equals.
He was extremely cruel and horrible to her. And I think he drove her to
unhealthy people all around. Wow.
And I think he took advantage of her fragility.
Absolutely.
Hey, anyway, this leads into what we're talk about mental health. But first, let's talk about medical news of the week.
Okay.
So, 27-year-old woman, body shamed by her doctor, is diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. So this young woman, she was experiencing stomach pain, and she lost 35 pounds that she didn't intend to lose. She was, a bit overweight, but she hadn't intended to lose that weight. She goes to see a gastroenterologist. The gastroenterologist not only does not want to run any tests, he says, that's great that you lost this weight and that you can't eat, because she couldn't eat, she couldn't keep anything down. She had pain, and she had this weight loss. And the doctor said, well, that's fantastic that you lost all this weight. And this is a blessing, actually. You should look at this as a blessing. Oh, I'm not going to run any tests. This is a great thing that you can't eat any solid food. I should note that this happened in California. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but
I can't imagine in New York City that a doctor would have the nerve to do that and not cover themselves at least.
And told her that she doesn't look malnourished when she was concerned about the weight loss, Wow. And so she went to she was crestfallen. I mean, she was devastated. So she went to another gastroenterologist because she talked about this on her Instagram, her social media. And they encouraged her, look, go get a second opinion, go see someone else. Well, the other gastroenterologist diagnosed her with stage 3 cancer, and she had a humongous tumor inside there. So luckily she's fine. I mean, you know, they removed the tumor, they did surgery, and she's got the chemo and all that other, she's fine. But what do you think?
Talk about being like unheard, invalidated, dismissed, all those things. That doctor had to at least, you know, listen. Talk about not serving your patients. Wow. Wow, that's awful.
You know, they said that it was body shaming, which I agree. But I also wonder how much of it was that she was young and looked healthy, and this lack of information, I think, that gastroenterologists have about what the new face of gastric cancer, right? Because it used to be a person in their 60s that had cancer, and now it's people in their 20s and their teens with cancer. I wonder how much of it was that, well, she's this young, pretty girl. She looks great to me, you know.
Yes.
My wildest dreams would I imagine that she would need a colonoscopy or
young people don't look ill necessarily. Yeah, they're not thinking about the new face of cancer, like you're saying.
Exactly.
It didn't fall into his queue as to the usual.
Like, I wonder if she were 47 and she came in with that complaint.
Oh, I'm sure he would right away.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, for sure if she was 57 or 67. But, you know, that's the thing now, is that, do they have their antennae up for this now? You know, and I just wonder.
I'm curious to know how old that doctor was. Like, you know, that's my thought. Like, was he like an older dude? Was he like a young doctor?
I didn't say too much about the doctor, but he just said that maybe it's not such a bad thing that she lost weight, and categorized her not being able to eat as a blessing. I think she's also an actress, you know.
Okay.
But I just wonder how much of it is like the paradigm shift. Like, hey, red flags here, you know, and they're not seeing the red flags.
Sounds like fat shaming to me, though. Sorry.
Oh, it's absolutely fat shaming. It's absolutely fat shaming. But also, I wonder if she were older and she came in with those same complaints. It would be interesting to know if she were twice that age and she came in with that. If she were 54 and she came in with that.
Yeah, I would take betting odds that if she were 54 and came in with that he would investigate right away. That's
what I'm saying. I'm not letting him off the hook for the fat shaming. I'm just saying that there was probably more to that decision than just, well, she looks pretty and she lost the weight and she looks great. I think it's also, she's a young woman, just incredible. Ooh, so remember we talked about the Biogen Alzheimer's drug, Aduhelm?
Yes. Yes.
So
how do you pronounce it?
Aduhelm. I think it's Aduhelm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so it got approved by the FDA. And then 3 members of the FDA advisory board, one after the other, quit because they're like, we didn't say that this drug was okay this drug should not be in market at all. The medical community, the Alzheimer's community, is up in arms. Well, they're kind of split, because on one side you've got advocates. It's about time. This should have come out a long time ago.
Right.
And then on the other side, they're saying that there's no way this drug should have come to market because of the because they don't think that it really works the way they're saying it does, to clear the amyloid plaques. And B, they're finding instances where it's causing damage, like brain bleed and brain swelling, etc. So thoughts?
Well, as you know, my mom has advanced stage Alzheimer's that we know of. And I remember years ago, we took her to a neurologist for a baseline. And at that time, there used to be a med that you would give to people who are at early stages. And the idea was that it was going to extend the early stage and delay. And the neurologist at the time said, I don't think this drug's all that. What happens is you end up giving too much of that drug and holding on too long to the patient. You just keep over medicating the patient in hopes. And she felt like it didn't really, it was like a false promise. So she said, don't bother with it. And I'm a little concerned that that's what's going on here, that it's a false promise. And I understand that people are coming from the, the Alzheimer, they're like, please bring us something, bring us something. But if you have to get like PET scans and it's going to cost some ridiculous amount of money, I mean, who's going to be able to afford it? How is it going to be covered?
Insurance. I'm glad you brought that up, because now that the other thing that's happening as a result of this drug being approved, this Biogen drug, now the industries, the PET scan industry, and what's the other scan that they do? The spinal tap? Is it the
spinal tap? Okay.
Yeah. They are pushing now, along with the approval, that they should be covered as well, because
but those are so expensive, and then they're invasive,
but that's the thing, right? Because this drug has now been approved, they've hitched this wagon.
They've hitched to that wagon. Okay.
Yes, basically saying now we need to have these screenings, otherwise how will you know who to prescribe this to? So that's the new push.
Big machine. Okay, all right.
So now the big push. I mean, and this drug is $56,000 a year. That's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And insurance, I think, is going to pay for most of it. I think. I'm not sure.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know where that is.
If I felt, how I feel, if it was something that I thought was really going to do, if it really made a difference, if it could really extend your life or extend the quality of life, of course you'd want to do it. Yeah. But it doesn't bode well that everybody is, dropping out and protesting and feeling like this hasn't been properly investigated, or that the evidence and the statistics are a little thin. Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like a false promise.
Yeah. But patients are optimistic, and they're
sure. There's nothing otherwise. What is there?
Yeah. Yeah. Is that what it is? That there's really not a lot much else out there?
It's not really. I mean, there's things like enrichment, but there's really nothing. There's nothing. I mean, other than the one med that I forgot its name that years ago, but that's also for early stages. And then that just didn't really pan out. So I guess the idea is this new one really does do something. It really does delay the beyond the mild cognitive impairment.
Wow.
I mean, but that's controversial. People feel it was rushed right through the FDA. So there's so much money to be had. This is such a holy grail.
You know what I worry about? So they take this, because what happens a lot of times is these products are rushed to the market. They skim the cream off the top of the market.
Yes.
And then they worry about the fallout and the payoffs and the lawsuits after the fact. Right?
Okay.
Like
any number of drugs, fen-phen. I remember fen-phen would be an example.
That was right on the tip of my tongue. Fen-phen.
I remember that.
Everybody rushed for the fen-phen, and then all of a sudden, it's a couple of years later. I don't even know how many years later. It was like lawsuit after lawsuit.
That was a really problematic drug. We saw young people with all kinds of like vascular problems. I mean, just mind-blowing vascular problems. I remember when I worked at the hospital, that was just like, it was crazy. So yeah, they rushed that one through too.
Yeah. Well, I guess
so much money to be had.
Yeah.
And also, how do you know? Like I could see why people would want to have, something that's so high stakes, so emotional. Also, we don't know if the tangles are all there is, the tangles and the tau and and we don't know for sure. Sometimes people have that and they don't have dementia. So
Right. That's the other
It's
thing that they
still
were
not-
saying is that
it's still
there's
not
no
one shot
guarantee
deal.
that the amyloid plaques is the de
Correct.
facto, you know, reason or the precursor to, yeah.